I prefer the playfulness of AI above photography. I've been doing this for 21 years already, the photography thing. So you shoot 6,000 images a day, 3 days in a row, or advertising agencies doing the retouch, and then you see your images and, oh my God, my image. I had this period I called myself a professional button pusher because I was getting frustrated. So for me now, AI is much more interesting because there's a little bit more time to explore because it's so quick. But in a different way, I don't feel like a robot anymore.
Our guest today is Brenda De Vries, photographer turned AI image creator who's passionate about teaching AI image generation, Midjourney to other people. And I wanted to invite Brenda on the podcast because I really love her aesthetic. And I think that when she creates images, you can see her experience and her background in photography. So, Brenda, fantastic to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
So I really wanted to start by talking a little bit about your background. So I think you started in fashion and then you moved to photography. And now the reason that we're talking today is you're doing a lot of work incorporating AI. And I'm just curious, so what drew you to photography to begin with? And how has that evolved into the AI generated imagery?
So I did a study. I did a polytechnic for the apparel industries, the technical side. And basically I wanted to go to China to become a manager of a production facility. But in that time in China, it wasn't really appreciated when you were a female. So I didn't get the job. And then I was like, oh, okay. So I got a job in the Netherlands within the apparel industry. And I got bored because I felt that you had to make at least 10 years of experience before you could get a nice, interesting job. After my studies in that era, we also didn't have internet in every household yet. So we still had the book that's called the Yellow Pages. And I was like, oh, I want to do something creative. And then my eye dropped on photography course and I borrowed a camera. I didn't even know what a DSLR camera was. And geez, should be ashamed. I started with a course and that was still analog with analog films and stuff. And then I got really excited about it. So I did another course the year after and another course. And then one of my teachers was, yeah, we think you're talented. Why don't you start doing the academy? And I was like, oh, wow, that's a big thing. But I decided to do that because the work I was doing was, oh my God, if I'm going to keep on doing this, I'm going to be very stressed out when I get 30 because I graduated already when I was 21. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do photography because then at least I have some work that makes me feel inspired and have fun and brings a smile on my face instead of working 80 hours a week on an office. So I prefer to the photography side. So next to work, and I started working as a traffic manager within an advertising agency, which was a very smart move in the end, I found out, because our directors asked me to do some sketch photography for the clients. And then you get to know art directors, how they work, what their language is. And so that helped me in my career for becoming an advertising photographer. Yeah. So that's my little story about photography. Yellow pages, and I want to do something creative.
That's amazing. This is something you've been doing for kind of 20 years, yeah? Yeah, so you've been working in the photography industry for a long time. And then tell us a little bit about how you felt when you first discovered Midjourney.
Yeah, and then Midjourney came. You do realize that in 2 days it's their 2-year anniversary. They
Yeah.
started only at the 12th of July, 2022. Can you imagine? It's only 2 years old.
Feels longer. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's only 2 years old. Anyway, so not last March, but March 2023, I already heard about Midjourney. I was like, oh, what is this? Oh, this is going to take over my job. So I felt a bit scared at first. And I was like, oh, but it's also very interesting. Because then if you have this kind of fantasy about an image, and if in the end it will develop into a system where you can really create the image you have in your own mind's eye, that would be amazing because when you do a photography job for client, they bring me the model. They often choose the location. because the client prefers another location than I would prefer as a photographer whatsoever. All the people are involved in photography production. And I was like, oh my God, but that feels like a lot of freedom as well. But at first I was really scared. I did realize when I'm scared for something, then I need to sort it out, getting context for it. Because I think it's important to get to know your fears, because most of the time there's nothing to be scared about. And of course, a lot of photographers might disagree with me. But so I started exploring, and I started with Midjourney version 4, which basically still really sucked because it was more like airbrushed drawings. But 2 weeks later, they launched version 5. So I was getting used to prompting in 4. Then suddenly there was version 5. So I was like, oh my God, I need to learn prompting again because it was a different system in prompting. And then 5.1 came, 5.2 came. I started giving classes already last year in July because it also really inspired me. This whole feeling of freedom of finally trying to make, for as far as possible within the boundaries of Midjourney, whatever you want to create, which I think is a great feeling. It's not about power, but it's about boosting your own fantasy as well, and also get inspired by Midjourney itself, because sometimes you type in a prompt and suddenly something else pops up. But that's interesting too. And then suddenly this whole creative process starts, which I think can improve our creative process or even make it quicker because you get in contact also with what you don't want.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple of things to unpack there, but I like what you said about, so it's the concept of like when you're afraid of something, there's an idea that there's growth, there's a possibility for growth there as well.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the
And
brain that tells us that you get uncomfortable because it's something new. But I think growth is within the area of getting comfortable with the uncomfortable.
mm, yeah, I think that's true. Do you think that's the reason? Because we spoke a little before the call, and we spoke about the fear and the excitement of this. And the
Yeah.
excitement's obviously like you can do things you couldn't do before with models that you couldn't have in locations you couldn't go to. And then the fear is it's going to take my job. So is this kind of like why? And how long did that transition take to you? Was it a couple of weeks? Was it months you were worried about it?
During version 4, but I only got it, I didn't work for 2 weeks. But when version 5 came, I was like, oh my God, now it's getting pretty serious already. And of course, we had to, as a photographer, you need to deliver high resolution images. But then Topaz came. And then suddenly, if you need a high resolution image, you have to do a little bit of Photoshop and add some detail, whatever. But so that was the moment I was like, oh yeah, it might take us over. Or I thought about it as well. Okay, this is going to be so much cheaper than a real photographic shoot. And within our capitalistic society, to be honest, everything needs to get cheaper because otherwise things are not feasible anymore. I was like, oh my God, this is going to be the new thing for making commercial imagery.
Was it like a pragmatic thing? Because from my part, it was like, oh, this terrifies me. I could see all this technology advancing and replacing me, but also at the same time, I can see it's useful and I don't think it's going away.
You mean the technique is not going away?
Yeah, like I can't imagine like text to image going away, and I can see,
Oh no, the genie is out of the bottle. There's not going to be another genie that's going to put this genie back in the bottle. Even because the European, I believe from Europe, they have made a statement that all the AI generators have to be transparent about the data they use. So the
yeah,
worst thing that can happen, because Midjourney is private about it, about their data scraping. So the worst thing that can happen is that Midjourney is not allowed anymore to be available in Europe, for example. But then, of course, there are going to be solutions for it as well, like a VPN or whatsoever. So I don't know. I think it's so powerful that the statement is, I believe that 90% of commercial imaging will be done by AI by the end of 2025. That's a big statement, but that's the prediction. That means there's only 10% left of the photography job, but all the photographers are still there. hopefully a few of the photographers are going to burn their fingers on Midjourney or some kind of other AI image generator. But at least that's what I hope, or make a combination of photography and AI.
That's an interesting concept. So you've mentioned that you create courses as well. So do you find the people that are coming to you to do courses, are they other professionals wanting to upskill? Or are they just more creatives? Or are they people that had nothing at all to do with creative industry?
Most of them are photographers or they're art directors or creative directors,
Okay,
which
cool.
of course I think is pretty logical. Yeah, I can imagine as an art director, they always had to make a mood board and they had to find the right images. And now they can create their own images for their mood board to brief a photographer, for example, or to have a chat with a client whatsoever. I can also imagine that because most art directors and creative directors have this very specific idea in their mind that they would prefer in the nearby future to create it themselves, depending on whether they like it, of course, to sit behind a computer and being bored with parameters and whatsoever. But yeah, let's see how that goes. I think there are also going to be lots of people that don't like it sitting behind a computer and doing some prompting. And so I think, and I also think that Midjourney is not really photography. It's just a different craftsmanship kind of thing. You need a different talent for it. It's not to say if you want full control of the image, please go do photography. If you're okay to play along and embrace the glitches that AI has, I think the glitches are extremely funny. But lots of people don't agree with me because they want to have full control over the image. So I think it's almost like a renewal. Yeah, let's see where it goes.
There's definitely an element of randomness to it.
The most funny things happen when you ask Midjourney to create images of people vacuum cleaning or stuff. With the household appliances, it's still extremely funny. With the ironing, it's with vacuum cleaning, it's with every household appliance. You never get that machine exactly how it is. It's always a mix of different machines. For that area, the photography still needs to be done. But then still, of course, you can make a background maybe. But then, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, like I enjoy this as well. Like I think it's a new technology, and I think that new technology should bring kind of new possibilities. So
Exactly.
just trying to replicate what we already have and not quite achieving it is dumb. Yeah, it just becomes monetary, doesn't it? Oh, we can do it cheaper now. And there's not really many artists out there excited about that. But maybe we can be a bit more optimistic and excited about the weird shit it does.
Yeah, and the new possibilities it creates. If you're open to a new way of thinking or a new way of exploring solutions, AI might be your best friend. And I also think because there every few months new functions are there, and I gave myself an assignment for this summer to really sit down and create my own kind of aesthetic within AI. This is quite a job. If there's so many variables you can change to create a new aesthetic that's different from, I don't know yet where I will go, but I think it's an interesting thing to spend at least 4 weeks to find some kind of aesthetic that's something in between photography and AI or whatsoever. I don't have the answer yet. I just have to sit down, make time, and start doing. But that's the thing I'm looking forward to right now, to explore that, because I think that might be the biggest, most beautiful thing AI offers us now.
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea because Midjourney introduced style, not style references. Yeah, style references, the codes that you put
Yeah.
in, and then it will give you a weird random style.
Oh, you mean the random style references? Yes.
Yeah, yeah, that kind of thing. But
But
to
now you
create
can
your
buy the random style references with images that you chose for your style references, and you can even add the dash B, the personalization.
Mm,
And there's this link for all the personalization codes of all other people. So you can make even a combination of the style references of images, the style references of the random numbers in combination with your personalization and give relative weight to it. That's what I mean with creating a new style, to mix
Yeah.
them all up, to find this kind of thing that you're like, oh, wow, yeah, this is what I like. But that takes time to find it. It's a lot of
Yeah.
testing.
Yeah. Like I'm thinking if anyone doesn't know what a style reference is there a way to explain it? Like maybe you'd be good at that.
A style reference is that basically you can add an image to your prompt. And because you call it a style reference, Midjourney looks at the contrast, use of color, and the overall aesthetic of the image. So it doesn't look at the subject or what's within the image. It's really looking at the aesthetic of the image. So it's more the photographic style. Natural light, is it high contrast or is low contrast and very photoshopped whatsoever. And that's what it will apply on top of your text prompt.
Yeah. So then this idea of kind of mashing those together, because people sometimes people criticize AI because it's stealing an artist's work, but you can't. No artist's ever been able to own a style, like
No, exactly. I agree here with you. Yeah.
And then because the way that it's trained on the data, it does weird styles. It blends things in a way that a machine would do it that a human won't. So you get these interesting kind of surreal and bizarre things. And I think a criticism of Midjourney is that it doesn't create, it's just regurgitating training data and copying. But the idea that you've brought up to bring your own aesthetic, I think
Yeah, so
that,
create your whole own aesthetic, and maybe you can even create multiple aesthetics that you really like. But it takes time to find it because the space is so big with all the variables you can choose from. Only for the random styles, there are like 4 million different numbers. Can you even imagine? Even thinking about it, I'm like, within 4 weeks creating a cool aesthetic, it's not going to work. I need more time because
yeah,
there's so many choices. You literally dive into this world of unlimited possibilities and unlimited combinations. Sometimes it also overwhelms me because you can make so many choices that
yeah,
then suddenly I go into freeze mode. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to do anything. It's really unlimited,
mm.
which is great at one side, but also scary at the same time. So it's also very interesting to start exploring the part you're scared of again, of course.
Yeah, that's it. Growth and fear and growth go hand in hand. Okay, so on your LinkedIn, you mentioned combining photography and AI worlds. So can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so basically the whole idea is that you just prompt your backdrop, whether it's Antarctica or South Africa, or somewhere on a mountain or on another planet. And then basically the perspective, the light setup. So you can go back into a studio and just photograph the models and just combine it together in Photoshop, which means you don't have to travel with the whole team to another country, which means less flights, which means maybe it would be a little bit better for Mother Earth. At the
Yeah,
same time, at the same time, because I thought it was smart to share that with people, but at the same time, it gets because you created the backdrop already within Midjourney, you also get it. The shoot is becoming a whole lot more static. There's no playing around because it's one perspective, it's one light setup, and then you have to go into detail.
mm,
So when it's about cheaper, of course, it's going to be cheaper because you're only going to spend 1 hour on photography Mac, and then you have it. So the whole phase of playing around and trying other stuff gets a bit more complicated because I expected that people would be like, oh yeah, I want to have a combination. But I only had one other client that was like, huh, yeah, I want you to make me a Tintin running on Stone Island, and I want to have the rocket here, and I want to have this yellow plane there. It needs to be a water plane, really important. And then you have to photograph my labradoodle till it pop, and then I want you to shop it in. So I basically only photographed his face and his dog in the right perspective with the right light and combined it all together. The guy was really happy, but this is a really good example of what AI can do for us.
yeah. I think sometimes I make this mistake as well, and I separate them You go 100% AI or you go
No,
100%.
I think in the end, the mixture is very interesting. And a few weeks ago, a set designer also did a course with me. And he was like, oh my God. Suddenly, this whole new world opened up for him as well as a set designer. Yeah, because he knows he always go to the studio where he builds his set. And now he's maybe building a set in Midjourney or an example of it or whatever. I think the most people still don't realize or are too busy with the work they're doing today about the possibilities it might bring us.
Yeah, and we're just really at the start because I don't know how much you follow outside of the photography and Midjourney world, but obviously now you can create your image and then you can create a depth map from it and you can fake videos that look 3D, but also the technology that turns 2D images to 3D images is constantly
I know, I
improving.
know. And there's
So
even this app, and it's not commercially available yet, and I don't remember the name, but basically you make a picture in Midjourney of a model, then you only need a flat lay of the top. A flat lay like you photograph it from above and a flat lay from the trouser, and you tell the bot, okay, this is what the person needs to wear as a top. This is trousers. And just strap e-commerce photographer, eat your heart out. Because it's still not perfect, not at all, but it will get there with now and I don't know how many months, maybe years, but it's scary as well how
yeah,
quickly it goes.
but maybe there's an opportunity there as well. You said something that I haven't thought about, like you're creating your sets in Midjourney, but then we can physically create them in the world. And I think in the next 12 months, you can probably do it today with the technology we have, but
Yeah.
you could photograph your set and then you could quite easily turn it into a 3D world. And then you can also rotate your camera, make that into a still and Photoshop
Yeah,
your
yeah,
image.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
But
going there.
yeah. So one thing AI does, it enables us to do more with less time. And I wondered if you've started experimenting more with video because that's having a moment at the moment. It's exploding. You can upload a still image and animate it. And fairly recently, there's a new one that you can upload two kind of images and it will
I know.
animate between them.
Yeah, I know,
I've been
which
waiting.
is mind blowing.
Are you thinking about or experimenting more with video now?
Basically, I'm working on a job right now where we are with a group of visual prompter and we create all the stills so that somebody else who's really good with video is going to create the pieces in between the stills to make the whole video.
Oh, wow.
Because the video specialist is not as good in visual still prompting as we are. Basically, you work with a whole team of this one is doing this kind of prompting in AI, this one is doing that kind of prompting, and then the whole team together is creating the output, which is
Yeah.
really great because you prompt together in the same room, so you see each other's prompt, and it's very open, and you help each other out. A new way of collaboration, basically. I had to get used to it at first, but in the end, I was like, oh my God, this is fantastic. Just share and go along and grow together.
I think the best creative work always comes from teams, really. So it's this
Yeah.
interesting idea that one person could do it all, but it's still creatives like to collaborate and come up and share ideas and back and forth. And it's almost the same thing with Midjourney that we were talking about. There's an element of randomness and you can embrace that and build upon it and go in a route that you didn't think you were going to go, which is the way, same as working with a team, really. Ideas that you weren't imagining.
Yes, exactly. Which is the fun part. And then
Yeah.
suddenly, like, oh, but this is really interesting. All that stuff a little bit deeper. And
Yeah, that sounds cool. I'd love to do that actually. Because all my work with AI pretty much happens in this room on my own. So like it would be cool to collaborate with some more people.
yeah, this is also my first time that I collaborate with other prompter. And I was like, oh my God, this is fun. Yeah. And you
Cool.
get better, you get more insight, and the learning curve gets quite
Yeah.
steep. Yeah.
Let's talk about the flip side of it then a little bit. So some people get upset if you say, I created this image, because the argument is you didn't create it, AI created it. So what do you think about that?
I think there are two approaches to this whole subject. For example, if you only type in a photograph of a cat, drone shot, for example, sorry, you didn't create the image, AI did it. But if you, because I started with very simple prompts and they're going to get longer and longer, and sometimes I might do even 400 iterations before I get what I want, changing the prompt, maybe adding other images to it and to get it where I want it to get, which means I'm making creative choices about where what is going to be and how it's going to look. I only use the AI to create the image that I want. So then there's this whole creative process. And I think it's more than fair when you have worked for like 5, 6 hours on an image with those 100 or more iterations that there is this creative process. And I would say then you would be the copyright owner because the AI is only a tool, like my camera and my whatever is also a tool because I move it, I create the image I want. But when it's just a simple prompt and you didn't make any creative choices, then I don't think that you don't have the copyright. And I also found it very interesting because on Facebook, it was like less than a year ago, I uploaded an image and it was with two black people. And somebody downloaded the image and did Photoshop on it and then uploaded again and said, yeah, well, this is better Photoshop according to my opinion. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And so I asked the person, like, would you have done the same if it was a real picture with real models? No, of course not. But I thought it was a very interesting thing happening. So there was this mindset that if you make an image in AI, we're all the owners of it and we can do
Yeah.
whatever we want with it.
For I think people feel enabled about the law, and the law is different all over the world.
Yeah.
Different
In China,
copyright.
it's very different from here. In China,
Yeah.
they decided that when you did some serious prompting, you're the copyright owner of the image.
It was like, I think in the US, it started off people were against photography. Like, they were like, if you just stand in a location with a machine and press, it wasn't like that when it began, but you press a button and you captured reality, what are you creating? Because you just captured what's happening. And painters were like, we're actually imagining, we have to understand the light and stuff. So, I mean, it's always been this
Yes,
argument.
it's a complex matter, let's put it like that.
Yeah. I think what we know about humans is, though, that we get used to things very quickly.
Yes.
So it might be controversial or
After
get,
that one incident, nobody downloaded my AI images anymore to do some research on it. Because I
yeah.
just asked the question, would you have done the same with real models? And because I make my creative choices. And it's fine if you have a comment on it and if you don't agree. But I thought it was extremely interesting that the person downloaded it and uploaded it again. No, this is so much better. Okay. Thank you for your feedback.
I think something people don't understand what goes into it. Like, I mean, because you write a drone shot of a cat and you'll get something that some people might like, but there's no really artistic process in
Process.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you don't have if you're not in the creative world and you don't have an eye to understand that, some people might look at two things that took ages and one thing that took very quickly, and they might have a preference towards the simpler thing, but subjective
Very
world.
true.
We
Yeah,
we
it's a
know.
very subjective world, which also is the beauty.
So, like, how do you think that all this kind of AI is going to impact the photography world? We've already talked about falling prices, cheaper things. Maybe in 2025, 90% of photography will be AI generated, how do you think it's going to impact the photography industry?
I also think it's going to impact the model industry. I think it's going to impact a lot more industries than only photography and modeling.
Yeah. Voice actor,
Yeah,
concept artist. But I had an interesting, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and let's take concept artists, for example. You can go to Midjourney and create a concept that you concept art that for, say, for a game or something. You can go and do that. But that's taking away the value that the artist adds, because they're an intelligent person that's thinking about it, and they can come up with a backstory of why
of
this and why
course.
that. And so maybe we're just in a dip where it devalues that. Oh, I can do it quickly and cheaply here, and everyone does it on Midjourney.
Yeah, well, I think it's going to happen is that concept artists can serve it instead of 10 clients, now it can serve 40 clients. Because you still need their craftsmanship and their knowledge. But Midjourney is going to make them faster.
Yeah.
The same was going to happen possibly with lawyers and bookkeepers whatsoever. Suddenly they don't service 10 people, they can service maybe 50 people on their own.
Mm.
You still need that human thing with the knowledge and the whole history of experience. But I think a lot of people are going to get quicker, which means we need less of those people.
Or the market grows.
Or the market grows. But yeah, I don't know about the market growth.
Yeah. Yeah. I mentioned this before, but a lot of people were scared of the transformation of like film to digital. Prices dropped because it came cheaper. But actually, and then the digital world exploded. There's way more image generation. There's way more video. There's just a ton more screens.
How many screens can we have? Yeah, so I don't know about the growth. If we would have a second planet, it would be fine,
That's kind of
considering growth
possible.
and stuff. But we don't have a second planet yet.
We don't yet, but with AR, like virtual reality,
Yeah, I
we've
agree. Yeah, we
spoke
might
about
need a
world.
lot more content. Yeah,
The one thing we know is that we don't know. The only thing we know is we don't know where it will go.
it's
Yeah.
just going to be a tool, I think. And as all other tools that got introduced, it's about making people quicker. And my question mark is all the time, isn't there any end to growth? I don't have an answer for this, but is it true that we can keep on growing and growing considering the amount of human people on this planet? I think there is a limit somewhere, somehow, but I don't know.
So let's talk a bit about your work. Do you have a favorite AI project? And maybe you can talk about what you liked about it and maybe some technical hurdles or creative hurdles that you overcame.
Yeah, so my favorite one is what I created for established sparkling tea. It's like I work together with the Stone Twins, a creative team. And established is a kind of it's a sparkling tea. It's a non-alcoholic beverage that put in a champagne bottle. It looks like champagne. It almost tastes like champagne, but you don't have the hangover the next day, which I
Mm.
think is a great idea and also very much of 2024. And the whole concept was old but new. So the old idea of champagne and how it was celebrated in the earlier days, considering advertising, and how can we create this new version of it? And I created it in February, which meant that version 6 was just launched before Christmas. And it was about a drink with a bottle, glasses, and lots of hands. The only advice I can give to everybody working with Journey, it's normal that you get frustrated sometimes because patience is your biggest virtue. And in the end, I got what I wanted. But I also talked with the creative team up front. I hope you like the glitches
Mm.
because if you don't, then we have to photograph those parts and Photoshop it in. But if you embrace the glitches, which is also the new, basically, then we can make some really cool stuff. And they decided it would be great to embrace the glitches and have some fun and try to create a new kind of imagery with it. So that's what he did, what we did. So I really liked that campaign just because, and of course there was a 3D artist involved for the bottle. And in the end, it all came together in those images. And I think it's also fun that there's an old lady in it and there are different ethnicities involved, and but especially the glasses and the hands. But also the funny thing that one glass is a little bit too big. You know, there's this woman nipping from a glass, and then when you look a little bit longer than 2 or 3 seconds, you're like, isn't this glass a little bit too big? That's what I mean as a glitch as well, which I think it might capture the eye of a person like, oh, I just saw it, but what did I really see? Which I love about AI, those weird, funny little things. So it gets close to photography, but it isn't photography. But because it's a bit strange, it might invite you to have a little longer look than only 1 or 2 seconds.
Mm. Yeah.
But that's my feeling about it. Of course, you don't have to agree.
No, I like it. I mean, I think as creatives, we are trying to, most of the time, we're trying to create something that people haven't seen before. Or that's what interests me most. Sometimes, maybe a lot of time, you're not doing that. The client wants something they've seen before. Like they literally want,
That's
oh,
that's
do that.
that's that's still happening a lot, even now
Yeah.
with some AI jokes I have going on. But this one I want to see, and I'm like, nice idea, but maybe this is a new thing.
I mean, we're programmed to notice things that stand out. Like my business called Only the Bold. So it's about creating things that are a little bit different and that stand out and that get the better results for clients because it is different. So I do, I'm on board with what you're saying. Like it's a little bit weird. Like you get the feeling like it's a little bit more interesting rather than just trying
Yeah.
to capture.
But I always have a talk with new clients up front. Okay, it asks or demands an open mind from you
Mhm.
because we're going to deal with glitches and it's not fully photographic. But if you want to have full control, please hire a photographer. Don't do AI because you're going to get frustrated.
Mhm.
But we might discover something that we haven't thought about that might inspire us both to create something even more interesting. So that's always the invite I give up front. And if they tell me, no, I want to have full control, I'm like, well, I'm not the person to work with. Go to another photographer that only does photography and then you get your full control.
Awesome. So have you fully embraced this now? I guess if it came to you and said, I want this project, but I want it to be for 100% pure photography, would you take that job? Or is everything you do now a combination?
Yeah, combination or I prefer the playfulness of AI above photography. And I've been doing this for 21 years already, the photography thing. And in the last years, it was only about shooting image banks. So you shoot like 6,000 images a day, 3 days in a row. You have to make selection and then you Photoshop like 60 images of that, or advertising agencies doing the retouch. And then you see your images and, oh my God, that's my image. They do their own style of retouching.
Mhm.
So I started to feel a little bit like a robot. I had this period I called myself a professional button pusher because I was getting frustrated. It was only everything was arranged. I just came there, put my lights on it, clicked, and then the art director was like, "Yeah, you got it." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't see that. I don't agree with you." But oh, you don't need to go to the next one. So for me now, AI is much more interesting because there's a little bit more time to explore, and because it's so quick, but in a different way. I don't feel like a robot anymore. I prefer above what I did. Yes.
Oh, that's amazing. I've never thought of it like that. So AI has enabled you to take more creative control.
Yes, which
That's
I like.
oh,
And of course, I make a lot of different images and I create a portal like this is what I prompted, what do you like? And from there you go on next level. But it's more a collaboration with the creative team instead of going to a set. And of course, the client and the agency already decided upon the models because most of the time you have your pre-production meeting and yeah, this is what the clients did, the models, this is the location and you get dictated. And that's what, and then, yeah, then you just go and you're going to do your thing.
mm,
But that also felt for me, I felt disconnected from my own work. As I said, calling myself a professional button pusher was for me also sharing the whole idea. Yeah, I feel like I'm just doing this because I'm quick with my lights and blah, 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 the composition, and I have full control over my lights and the camera. And of course, I can direct the models whatsoever. But it also disconnected me from my work. And
Mm.
I really didn't like that feeling, to be
That's cool.
honest. In the end, you want to have fulfillment of your work, right? You want to feel
Yeah,
fulfillment, and you want to have this sense of maybe even being proud of it. And that's what got lost for me
that's
within
really
advertising
cool.
photography.
Because I'm always looking for, well, I'm not always, it didn't start that way, but I'm more increasingly looking for the positives in AI. Like on another podcast, I was speaking to one of my guests, and he said, "So, what does a positive future of AI look like? We have the Terminators, all this negativity, and this your story is a creative being able to take control of their work and having more input, and that's amazing."
And collaborate a little bit more together with the other creatives instead of feeling dictated, which might not be the right word. Sorry, client. But that's how I felt internally, which apparently doesn't fit with my personality, or it doesn't
No.
make me happy. Let's put it like that. Of course, there are other photographers that don't mind, which is
Yeah.
fine and perfect, but I did mind.
And I guess like building on top of that, it's easier for clients to take a risk as well. If you've come up with 3 ideas and one of them's a bit risque and you need to build a set and shoot models and everything, like, but you could you could do something and show it them and maybe get buy-in a little bit easier.
Yeah, that's what you hope, of course.
It's a
But it's
dream.
because it's more collaborative, and both sides, or maybe three sides even, can have their story. Then you get together. Then I'm going to make proposals. Then the creatives are going to give me feedback. No, a little bit more that direction, this direction, and then there's this whole creative process going on, which I really like. So
Time
that for me is the positive.
to try and move away from the fear.
Yeah, so less people involved and a more intense collaboration and a very interesting creative project, basically. And that's what I hope for the future, by the way, as well, that it stays like that.
Mm. Is-
Until all art directors know Midjourney as well, and then they're going to dictate me. I want to have something like this and this. Can you prompt it for me?
So, like traditional photography, it's about capturing a moment. It's very good at capturing people's emotions. What do you think the limitations of AI are?
Basically, we're training it while we're prompting. So if you would decide to make a lot of pictures of people with different emotion, even just on the street, because it's a public territory, you can just upload it to the bot and you can train it, or use it as an image reference or as a style reference. And in the end, it will get it.
So yeah, there's a way around it. So do you think it's inferior to photography in any way?
AI, basically, if you compare photography and AI or Midjourney and photography with each other, it's like comparing pears and apple. It's
Yeah.
just something different. And people, it's just not the same. It's something completely different. It has a different language, different everything.
Let me ask you then, so as you dove into AI and learnt more about it, is there anything that surprised you about it?
Yes, of course. There were lots of things that surprised me. For example, the power of the word, and that was still when we were in version 5.1 or something, that only the word of poodle punk, or those weird words with punk behind it, such a tremendous influence on an image. Like, wow, I'm really learning some kind of new language. So the language is about apparently all the images worldwide available. And apparently people have tagged those images in a certain way. And then suddenly this word poodle punk is only one word in a whole prompt, changes your whole image. Which for me, but it happens with a lot of words that you never knew they existed. And then you're like, oh my God. Like I never heard of the English word gargantuan. If I want to have a dog that's bigger than a human, I need to giant works, gargantuan works better. So
Mm.
it's also this whole new world of words and their meaning and how it relates to images that, or even pixels, the noise that got tagged by other people. So for me, it's like learning a new language that's more difficult than learning Italian
Yeah.
because it's words combined with imagery, and images are always interpreted by people in a different way. So they give different tags. And then it's about how many people gave that tag so that Midjourney understands it. Anyway, so it's a complicated language to learn. Let's put it like that. But in that area, it's also very funny. That's suddenly like, oh my God, this is interesting. Oh, it worked like that. So for me, it's also still exploring.
Mm. So I've never really thought about that. So when you prompt, you have to prompt in English.
You can do it in Dutch, but you get less interesting results. You have more control in English. I do believe you can prompt already in Spanish and Chinese or something.
Mm.
But Dutch is a very tiny little country. My knowledge of English is getting better every day. Every day I prompt, I get a little bit more knowledge about the language.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. Like, I think as the tech develops and like more languages are brought in, then that will be like we'll see the different cultural impacts of different words on probably. I imagine people will build different models in the future.
I think
Country.
so. Yeah, Midjourney is already making a proposal because they did this poll under the community or asked you to fill in a questionnaire about would you like to have the possibility to see what is happening in a specific region with images and that you can even choose to use that style or something. So they're thinking about it already, about
Mm.
the meaning of words in different regions and stuff and how to combine it apparently with the bot. So that means even more choices to create a very specific, new, non-existing style.
Yeah, there's definitely lots of potential combinations. Cool.
Yes,
It's been fun chatting to you. We've hit about an hour, so I want to be respectful of your time. But I'd like to throw one last question at you. So I like to end the cast by asking guests for their advice. So I don't know if AI entrepreneur is the right word, but you're definitely someone that's embraced AI technology. What advice would you give to other creatives around AI?
my advice is what I saw happening from version 4 to version 6, where we're at right now. First, I could do my course in 4 hours, and then there was time for people to do some playing around with some techniques. And now it takes 5 hours, and there's not even time to play around anymore because there's so many new functions. Meaning, don't miss the boat. Just burn your fingers on it, get to know it a bit, so at least you have this basic knowledge of what's possible right now, because the amount of possibilities is expanding quite quickly. And otherwise, you might have to do a whole week training before you understand Midjourney and its possibilities. But that would be my advice. Please start burning your fingers on some kind of playing around with it or do a course or whatever, but it's only going to get bigger and more complicated. Building a website and numerous years ago was still very simple, but it got really complex. And I
Yeah,
think the same is going to happen with AI. I don't think it's going to get easier. I think it's only going to get more function.
that's really interesting because I think this is where everything's called AI at the moment. But I think there's two kind of main things for artists. There's the language models, which we haven't really spoke about. And then there's the creative AI tools like Midjourney. And I've just thought of this, but I see the AI models getting easier and easier. So I'm learning a lot about kind of prompt engineering. But as the models get more intelligent, that becomes less important. You can ask a dumber question and get a more intelligent answer. But what you've just highlighted to me is that it's different with these visual tools because they're getting more complicated and there's more knobs and buttons and twiddles and combinations that you can create and more fine control I believe that will obviously grow because artists want finer control and be able to control it.
Yeah, that's at least that's my gut feeling. And of course, it might get easier because you can ask ChatGPT for a prompt. But to be honest, if I ask ChatGPT for a prompt, there's a lot of noise word within the prompt that I get from ChatGPT. I can delete a whole lot of stuff from it. But I think in the end, all the functions the number of functions growing, in the end, creating the right combinations will possibly create very interesting new styles, visual styles that might
Definitely.
inspire the rest of the world. Let's put it like that. Yeah. But it means a lot of testing.
So thanks, Brenda. If people are interested in learning more about Midjourney, how do they find out more about your courses and what is the focus of your course?
The focus of my course is very much photography, and then specifically also human being within the photography, because that's what I photograph as a photographer. So within Midjourney, that's also what I'm specialized in right now. So it's very specific, and yeah, you can find me on my website or through LinkedIn. But my website maybe is the easiest. On my website, I state that I do mainly Dutch courses, but if you're interested for an English one, you could just mail me and we might be able to set it up. But it's very focused on human photography.
Nice one, thanks.
You're welcome.
If you like this video, you love our weekly newsletter, sign up at designresources.ai.